the mechanics of the expansion of consciousness. And as you know, I get downloads and cognitions and useful information about the topic at hand in the week or so, couple of weeks prior to the, from the time the last webinar ended. And I thought it was about healings for the expansion of consciousness. So we'll be doing a lot of great healing work tonight too. A lot of great transformational work as well. And talk about the mechanics of the expansion of consciousness. But as usual, what we're going to do is, for all the new people, I'm going to start by giving a description of what is energy healing, just so that we're kind of all on the same page. And but first I'll do a prayer of gratitude, then a description of energy healing, and then a little explanation about tonight's topic. And then we'll just dive into the healing work, because that's the really exciting, fun part anyway. All right, so that's a plan. Here we go. Starting with a prayer of gratitude. Thank you to the source of creation for being everything, for being this live webinar, for being the ancestors and their role in the presence of the physical bodies, our physical bodies, and for those who aren't in the body, for everybody. Thank you to the divine in all of us, for all of us as expressions of divinity, that we may work together tonight coherently, effectively, efficiently, profoundly, that we can cut right down to the core of whatever transformations are required for the development or the expansion of consciousness. We could also call this awakening, for the expansion of awakening, and that we may do that in the highest and best possible way. And then always with deepest gratitude to the eternal tradition of wisdom, whose role in creation is to anchor the flow of knowledge, without which we couldn't do any of this, and same for our ancestors, without which we wouldn't be in our bodies here doing this. So thank you to everyone. All right, so what is energy healing? In a nutshell, energy healing is basically, I think of it as kind of a technology. It's a technology of using attention or awareness to affect the physiology and everything else. So using consciousness or awareness, folding it back on its own nature, folding it onto the physiology, which is also made of consciousness, or folding it into a social situation, or folding it into your financial situation, or folding it into whatever is requiring an upgrade at the moment, intelligently, precisely, in a way which promotes successful effects, which promotes specific effects. So that's what energy healing is basically. And I was thinking about energy healing in terms of, well, I guess I can make one more little statement here. So in order to do that, we do need some navigational tools for the ocean of consciousness, because if we're taking our awareness and we're folding it into the field of consciousness, then of course we need to put it in the right place. So we do need some tools. So energy healing is basically a system, you could say, or a way of looking at that process of the self-referral loops of consciousness, a way of looking at it that allows each person to understand those mechanics with ever finer detail, so that the ability to focus attention intelligently continues to gain proficiency. It continues to yield successful results at an ever increasing rate. That's the purpose of energy healing. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. And I will like lay out some of the details of that as we're going along for anybody who's not sure. Terms, for example, terms I might use, or ways of looking at this process. Thank you everyone for being with me. It's a very exciting topic tonight. this topic, the mechanics of the expansion of consciousness. And the reason, for me anyway, I was thinking about why that's an exciting topic is because energy healing is about focusing consciousness. So if we're examining into the mechanics by which consciousness self-promotes or self-expands, it creates from within its own nature, waves of upgrades, it awakens from within itself, then what we're essentially doing is we're having a webinar where we heal our ability to heal through energy healing better, right? Energy healing, we focus attention or consciousness, we focus consciousness, and this webinar is about the mechanics of how that happens. All right. So I'm going to start by taking, I wanted to also add in one little disclaimer too at the beginning of this one. I've never done a disclaimer at the beginning of a webinar before, but today special because I am well aware that there are many people here in this webinar whose consciousness is awakened in ways that mine is not. So but I'm the mouth, I'm the servant. I'm the one who's I'm the one who's here making the presentation. So I just would like to say from my perspective why I felt confident to take on a topic like this, because it's not really a small topic, it's a pretty big deal topic. I felt confident to do it because I realized that the mechanics of energy healing are such that even if your consciousness is in a place a little different from my consciousness, ultimately, it is the source of creation that's structuring the transformation process. So I can still be the voice, I can still make a description of what's going on. Even if I don't fully, maybe I'm not experiencing it the same way you're experiencing it. Let's put it that way. It's still okay. We'll all get, in other words, we're all going to get what we're supposed to get from this. And so I'm trusting that. That's one of the things I'm doing. And everybody, I know, especially those of you who've been with me for a while, know that I don't have like a really tight plan for these sessions because it is the consciousness of the collective which basically promotes the different effects that take place in these sessions. So I'm kind of used to doing this without knowing exactly what's going to happen next. It's okay. It's okay. It's fun that way. It's more fun that way. All right. So now let's do it. I'm going to look out into the field of the collective. I'm just looking into the field. Hello, everybody. And so the first thing that I'm noticing as I look out into the field is I'm noticing a very kind of bright, scintillating energy that seems to almost like a electric or something, maybe subtler than electric, maybe subtler than electromagnetic, but it seems to be humming in a very lively manner in the collective of our group. So that's exciting. And so, my job is just to unpack this. So I'm going to unpack it and tell you what I see. All right, so this energy, for one thing, it seems to be directly related to parts of the nervous system that are associated with bliss. So that's nice. This scintillating energy that's kind of sitting under the surface with our group is therefore causing a kind of awakening or activation of the deep inside the brain area, that substantia nigra area, which is where dopamine is produced, and then up into the third ventricle, where we have all these little organs that are responsible for regulating satisfaction. And I'm seeing at least 2 organs in that area, which have a relationship to expansion of consciousness. In other words, 2 organs at least in that area which are activated when consciousness expands. So those two little guys are getting flow of our awareness in the third ventricle of the brain. Sorry, I don't know the names of everything I see because I'm not a medical doctor and I have not been trained. I know some of the organs there, but not all of them. It's okay. And here's another thing that's happening is as awareness moves into this third ventricle of the brain area, I'm also seeing a very nice kind of, that scintillating energy is also translating through the heart chakra area, and then it's moving up into the third ventricle of the brain. So it's coming, that activation of awareness or consciousness is originating in the heart area first, and then it's moving up into the brain. That's nice. So what we're seeing in our collective then is a kind of heart activation in the whole collective, which is pretty common, right? We often have something like that happen at the beginning of these webinars. So it's nice to have that heart activation. I'm also seeing a lot of, I'm seeing this heart activation is also tying into the ancestral archive. So we've got the ancestors kind of online, which is also very nice. And a kind of honoring of the ancestors taking place at this moment in order to support their ability to feel happy and safe and well in our webinar tonight. Also, I'm seeing fear clearing from lower chakra areas, third chakra and the second chakra areas of the physiology. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So there's some physical restructuring too going on for people, which is not what I did necessarily thought, but that's good. We like that. Everything is tied together. I did want to talk a little bit here at the beginning about the relationship between the physiology and the expansion of consciousness, and a couple of cognitions that came in this last couple of weeks. So one of them, first I'd also like to give a shout out to my friend David Buckland, who is from Canada, and a wonderful man. And he brought to my awareness this great concept that even though there's a kind of a lot of us have learned that there's a kind of standard path by which consciousness expands, right? You've got waking, dreaming, sleeping, and then transcendental consciousness, and cosmic consciousness, and God consciousness, and unity consciousness, and Brahman consciousness, like that. That his point, which I thought was very interesting, is that everybody traverses that path a little differently. So even though there's kind of a standard setup that, well, ideal, you know, principally you go from this state of consciousness to this one, and they kind of build sequentially on each other. It's not necessarily what everybody's experiencing right now. And I found that a very exciting concept, especially because I'm working with people a lot of the time who, for example, haven't learned meditation before they come to me. And I'm sure there's some of you folks out there who maybe haven't learned that yet, and yet are having experiences of transcending thought, or having experiences of refined perception, or all kinds of exciting, rich, life-enriching experiences. And so we have to look at the model a little bit. And I'm not as much of an expert on the model as my friend David, but if you're interested in that, you can check out his website, because he's got a lot to say about that, and it's all very interesting. Anyway, back to the point of this, is that I did have this cognition, though, related to it. And that was that there's a cycle. And I know I've talked about the divine dialogue a lot in the past. You can check out my website for that. But this is a slightly different angle of looking at this cycle. And that is, because I'm looking at the mechanics of how consciousness expands, right? And so I get this cognition, and I realize that cognition is one step in the cycle. That one of the features or aspects of expansion of consciousness is cognition. Because we suddenly, you realize, like when consciousness expands, you realize, oh, wow, it's not in this limited framework that I thought it was. I see that myself, I see the self, and I see the universe in this larger framework. So cognition is like, it's like one station along the stops of a process. So cognition is one step of the process. And then cognition gives rise, once a cognition is realized or gained, then it has to be integrated. And I'm going to go through the loop, and then we're going to come back to a couple of these points and look at them in a little more detail. So cognition then integrates, and that's where we get the relationship between consciousness and the physical matter of the body. And that's where we notice that some people's consciousness expands differently than others, right? Because it has to do with the nervous system. Everybody's nervous system is a little different, so we all experience it differently. Okay, then, so cognition, integration, purification. After the cognition is integrated, the next thing that happens is it gives rise to a wave of transformation. So most people, when they come to see me, because of my role as an energy healer, often when people come to see me with physical complaints, that's the point in the cycle where they're at. They're at the point where they're dealing with some kind of purification or some kind of discord in the physiology. And what the discord in the physiology does, the pain, what pain does, is it drives a person towards the next cognition. Because the way you get past the source or the seed of the symptom is you have to kind of like get underneath it, and you have to understand like what's the fundamental form that's giving rise to that particular symptom. And so that creates cognition again. And then the loop continues. It spins, it spins, it spins. So anyway, so this is a loop. And I want to go back now, cognition, integration, purification, and look at it with just a little bit more under the microscope. Oh, hello. We have a box elder bug in the house. At least it's not a scorpion. Anyway. All right. So when I was thinking of this topic, I was thinking, well, the place where energy healing is the most useful in this cycle of cognition, integration, and purification is actually at the integration part of the process. Because in a sense, that's where the rubber meets the road with regards to each individual person's experience of expansion of consciousness. So the thing is, and I was just thinking about this earlier, and it was making me think about the role of hallucinogenic drugs. So I wanted to have a word about that. I just wanted to mention a little bit something about that. So it's possible, and it's not necessarily just hallucinogenic drugs, because there are also techniques that do this as well. But it's possible to have like flashes of cognition or flashes of expansion of consciousness. But unless the experience is integrated, it's like kind of like it doesn't count, right? If a person has an experience under the influence of, say, a particular kind of organic chemical or something, and then when the chemical wears off, look, there he is again. I've got a little bit of nature with me here. Anyway, when the chemical wears off, then the experience is lost. And also, in many cases, the effect of the chemical actually creates changes in the nervous system which make it more difficult the next time to integrate and stabilize, especially if the chemicals have any kind of impurities in them. Then the toxins get lodged in the physiology, and then the toxins inhibit further expansion of consciousness. So it's kind of like the difference between a short-term and a long-term solution, kind of. Right? There are certain types of experiences or processes that we can use to get that expansion of consciousness, but unless it's really fully integrated, it's not going to I would say in the long run, it's not going to benefit. So this is where energy healing is useful. If we look at that principle, if we look at that premise, that we can have an aha moment or an awakening experience or some kind of flash of Brahman or flash of unity or something like that, flash of God consciousness. But without the integration, it just falls back into the sea of forgetfulness. So that's where I was thinking it would be good for us to focus the energy healing. So I'm going to ask being, I'm going to ask everyone's divine being in the form of all of us, if there's anything useful that we can accomplish along that thread or along that line of promoting a condition in the physiology which supports greater capacity to integrate the experiences of expansion of consciousness. Maybe more mechanics will come out as we do that too, huh? We'll see. Okay. So I wasn't sure if I was going to use the visual aids that I prepared for today, but another cognition had to do with the way in which the web of life appears. So we've talked about the web of life quite a bit in past webinars and on the website and on YouTube. So you can, if you haven't picked up all of that, you can check it out online. But integration really means that the experience is present in every node in creation. Now we know that the nature of the causal level of physiology, which is that finest level of feeling of the physiology, the very deepest, the very first manifest level of the physiology, that the causal level of the physiology can resonate or hum in different frequencies. And when it does that, it provides a kind of a mode in which we function. So if, for example, a person wanted to manifest wealth, then there's a particular mode in the, well, there's several, there are many, but for that person, for any one individual person, there's a particular mode in the causal field, their causal body, which when the causal body's humming in that mode, it creates a systemic effect in the entire causal body for that person. And that systemic effect is essentially present in every quadrant or particle of creation at that time. And as it's lively through that one person's physiology in every particle of creation, it causes the whole universe to sort of shift around in order to support an expansion of the laws of nature for that mode. I was a musician for a really long time, so musicians play with modes a lot, right? Because we play with combinations of notes, and then I was listening to Irish music last night, and I was thinking about how, the music that comes from different little pockets of Ireland, they like to just, in one little pocket, they'll pick up a mode that they really like, and then all the songs are in that mode. And so then, like, you can recognize the difference between the music from Cairns as the music from Dublin or someplace. It's all different. So okay, so when the mode is resonating in the causal level of the physiology, it's like a friend. It's like a familiar structure within the field of one's own being. And what it does is it activates it's like a kind of a field effect is created at the causal level. And then it activates into the astral level of creation, which is comprised of all these threads. This is where the web of life is at the astral level. So if we have our bubble diagram, right, we've got the physical, etheric, mental, emotional, then there's astral and causal level. So causal's that big ocean of feeling, and then the astral's like the web of life, and then you've got the two values of silent, infinite being down at the bottom. Silence asleep and folded in its own nature, and silence dynamic and awake in its own nature but not yet manifest. So the web of life, if we look at all the modes, all the nodes in the web of life, so everywhere the threads of consciousness cross, there's like a node, like a little energetic node, and in each node there is a relationship of the laws of nature, so that opposites, complementary pairs of opposites, are together humming. This is kind of like a review for a lot of people, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to get just a little fancy on us here, and I'm going to show you some diagrams that I coughed up. So what happened was, this was the cognition that came up the last week. I saw the web of life looking a lot like the Sombrero Galaxy. So I brought out the Sombrero Galaxy because it's so similar. It looked like a kind of a disc. And I thought to myself, what am I looking at? And then I realized, this is the whole web of life all in one shot. We're looking at the whole web of life in one shot. And there was the question, well, what about Hiranyagarbha? Okay, for those of you who don't know what Hiranyagarbha is the golden egg of the universe. And so it's like the whole universe. If you ever looked at the universe, like from the outside looking in, it looks like a big golden egg. But what I realized is that the Hiranyagarbha is all the matter, all the physical material. We're just looking at astral level. We're just looking at the astral level. And remember, we were talking last webinar about Manu, the lawgiver. So the cognition was, I saw the web of life here like a disc. And I realized it looked an awful lot like this disc. Oh, look at that disc. That's Vishnu. That's the disc. That's the Sudarshana chakra, I think it's called, Sudarshana chakra. And so I went online and I looked up Sudarshana chakra, and everywhere I looked, I didn't have tons of time to look it up, but nothing I found online, sorry, not to obstruct Vishnu here, and nothing I found online was quite as elaborate as my cognition. So I'm going to give you something that was unable to find online. Basically, the Sudarshana disc, what I did find was it's supposed to have 108 points coming off of it, and it's supposed to be a kind of one way of looking at it is that it's a cosmic weapon. Another way of looking at it is that it somehow supports the ability to understand time. And then there was one other definition too, which I can't remember, sorry, please forgive, which was actually the most expanded and spiritual message of it. But so what I saw looked kind of like that, but I'm not so sure that it was the Sudarshana disc. It looked more like this one. So then I was looking at that and I thought, there's infinity at the center. And then there are all the threads of the web of life. They merge from infinity. Remember, we talked about the mist, that the relationship between the causal level of creation, which is a big ocean of feeling, and then the web of life, which is like a web of threads of consciousness, that between them is like a kind of the threads are so fine, they're like a mist. So here we find that quality right at the center, and then the threads diversify and they express, and then at the edges they fall back into infinity. So there's kind of this form right here actually forms a kind of a loop from infinite being up through the astral field and then back into infinite being. So I was looking at that and I noticed that all the complementary pairs of opposites are present in every node of it. And so I realized, you'll like this one, I don't know how many people recognize this diagram, but I think somebody here gave me this diagram in the first place. Now, it's rather small on my camera, so I'm not sure you guys can see all the detail. But what I want you to understand about this diagram is that here at there are all these little threads of consciousness that run from this edge to this edge. So they're threads and 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 threads. There's 192, is that correct? Yay, I remember the number, 192. I think, I'm not sure my camera's picking it up properly. It just looks like, sort of like 2 discs probably to you guys. But you have to imagine there's 192 little threads that are running this way. And these 2 different colored discs represent the relationship between the complementary pairs of opposites. Okay, so here we have 100% liveliness of being, of natural law, 100% liveliness. And here we have 0%. And then like at the sides, you've got like 50% here and 50% there. I'm like all virtual style over here. Okay, so what I realized is that what we're looking at is more like this thing. It's got being in the center, and it's got being around its edges, And it's just in the center where the threads manifest. And as I was looking at that cognition, I realized that Manu is as the lawgiver, or as the sort of the originator of the law, determines what will be the percentage of relationship between the awake within itself and not awake within itself laws of nature.
You just say something about the first one.
I could, but I'm not as much of a Vedic scholar as you. And but yes, thank you for the suggestion. But yeah, this has 192 because it represents the first mandala of Rig Veda? The 192 hymns of Rig Veda. Right. Okay, so the point that's coming out, thank you, I do appreciate you bringing that out, that actually the details of each one of these little lines is actually described through Vedic technologies. There's like a set of words or codes that describe each one of these little threads here as it's going around. And each one is one of the verses of the Rig Veda, is that correct? Yeah, one of the hymns of the Rig Veda. And that's actually important to know because the words that describe each one of the lines that are coming out of this are themselves codes, right? Like that's what language is. Language encodes experience. Language encodes consciousness. Music encodes feelings. But then, but the hymns are also presented in a musical fashion with their, oh look, there's another one. Yay. The sun makes those patterns. It's beautiful, huh? Anyway, back to our nebula here. So we've got this form. I think I want to actually go back to this one because this is what we're really looking at. We're back to this form in the web of life. And the question is, the original question was, how can energy healing help support integration of experiences of expansion of consciousness? What we've discovered, what seems to have come up like in the last, I'd say, decade or so, is it's not that hard for anybody to have a flash of expansion of consciousness. But the trick, the hard part, or the challenge is to integrate it sufficiently so that it's actually useful, so that it never leaves. Now, the quality of integration can hum or resonate in the causal field of self. But as I'm seeing that integration moving through the web of life at the astral level, there's a lot of richness of detail. And it looks to me as if this is the scintillating energy that we're feeling at the beginning, it's like details and details and details, codes and codes and codes and codes. So this is the sparkle of consciousness, is that it presents itself in various codes. Okay, that's great. So then the codes correlate with the physical body, right? Like there are Every organ of the body has its own magnetic field. It has its own hum. And every chakra has its own hum. And each one has, there are ways of expressing that hum verbally. So there are different like mantras associated with the different chakras. You can look them up online. They're easy to find. And there are also various aspects of the Vedic literature that are associated with various systems of the body and organs of the body. And so what I'm asking is for a shortcut, which I guess we can say maybe that's what energy healing is in a way, is how can we kind of like do a life hack here to to bring the specific areas of the physiology which are necessary, or I would say, we could say are like the main players for integrating expansion of consciousness. And awareness is going back to the third ventricle. So that's definitely one spot. And also into the top of the brainstem area. And then I'm also seeing the whole dopaminergic pathway system of pathways in the brain opening up. Endocrine system, all the systems, all the systems, all the systems, all the whole body, the whole body, the whole body. Okay, so then, thank you. So this is just the download coming in. I'm just speaking it as it comes. So the integration needs to be in every part of the body. It needs to experienced, needs to, going back to awareness is falling back into the causal field, the feeling level of the field of consciousness. There is a quality of relationship to divinity, which is extremely intimate and intense and sort of like luscious, which is fundamental to set a condition in the system that allows the physiology to feel safe enough that it can integrate the experiences of expansion of consciousness as they're coming. Also seeing some activations for the crown chakra here going on at the same time. That makes sense. In fact, a lot of awareness is going into the crown chakra right now. Just saying. The disc is here at the crown chakra. It's like an energy structure. It's sitting right there in the point at the top of the head. Like a crown, right? Or a halo. Maybe that's where the tradition or the myths of halos on angels or something, because they've got that disc right there. So they're like they're living life in a condition where they're so integrated. Yes, okay, it's coming in faster than I can say it. But the point being that the angelic forms of self, and you know me, I don't think of angels as being out there somewhere. Angels are modes of our causal bodies. So the angelic modes of the causal body are so stable in the relationship with divinity that they feel utterly, totally safe. And in that space of feeling totally safe, totally protected, totally loved, is able to stabilize the web of life, the whole web of life kind of in a package at the crown chakra area. So I'm just noticing that. And I'm noticing it in our physiologies. And I'm just taking a read on it and looking at it. I'm noticing that there are differences from right and left side. And also back to this diagram here. I'm having fun with the diagrams. I'm glad I went to the trouble. And this was that almost took me more hours than it should have. But anyway, just throw that. It's a little, if you look too close, it's a little messy. But anyway, if you think of this as the top isn't here. I am experiencing the top on the two sides, the two halves of the brain. Because look, this side here also exactly complements that side there. So we've got complements within this circle, but we've also got complements across the point. Oh, sorry, I'm pointing with my cursor and you guys can't see that. I'm sorry. I'll use my finger. So this side here complements that side there. And in the center is being, is totality or wholeness. So what we get when we connect the two opposites of this, anytime we're connecting any of the opposites, right, on this circle, we're getting wholeness, completeness, and totality. And the two sides of the brain working together, wholeness, completeness, totality. The let's see, right side of the brain is more engaged when we're experiencing expansion of consciousness. The right side is the exploratory side. It's the side that goes into the unknown. It's the side that's not afraid of a little chaos or a little havoc. And then the left side integrates, it creates order and stability, and it makes sense out of the experience more. It's the holding side. So if you're going to grab onto something, so you don't fall down, you grab, if you're right-handed, you grab with your right hand. And if you're going to reach out and like explore, like, oh, I wonder what's in that hole, then you reach over with your left hand. Yes.
You sit the other way around, right?
Oh, because the brains, but it switches, right? So the right side is the exploratory side of the brain, and the left side, and I might be a mirror image to you guys, so sorry, choreographer's dyslexia there, but anyway, you get the idea that the left side of the brain that controls the right hand is the like stable, and it makes sense of reality and it integrates, and the right side of the brain that controls the left hand is the one that explores into new territory and has less of a, uh-oh, my earrings are making problems for me. Sorry. This is new territory. There we go. From that side of the brain, the exciting side of the brain where you don't know what's going to happen next. Okay. So totality sits in the middle. Oh, that's that third ventricle, right? And also the substantia nigra area, wherever it is, like way back there in the center, back like where the brain stem comes up and connects to the brain. Ventral tegmental area, they call it. Substantia nigra and ventral tegmental areas in the center. So from the center is being fed this wave of sweetness from the causal level of creation, the way each one of us individually interprets that feeling of immense love and reverence and gratitude, adoration, and a sense of stability that, like, I'm safe. That feeling that's emanating, it emanates from the heart area, and it does that because basically the heart area, the physiology, is where we connect up with the causal level of the physiology, the finest feeling level. So the shift for the heart area, the heart is like acting as kind of a fundamental, it's creating a fundamental tone, or the beginnings of the basis of the mode of the causal body. It's also definitely affecting ancestors. So we've got the ancestors online, and they're getting this lovely, it looks like there's an opening taking place in the back, behind the heart, behind the, we call this the heart Mahamarma area, right? 3 big energy centers, head, Mahamarma, heart Mahamarma, and gut Mahamarma areas of the body. And at the center of the heart area, in the back, in the middle of the back, right there, I'm seeing what looks like a light medicine being produced by everyone's physiology. Moving back there, it's for the ancestors as much as it is for you. And it's releasing a lot of tension in the middle back area of the body. Good, that's nice. We like the release of tension. I'm also seeing that light medicine is creating a kind of a free flow of energy in the middle back area. It's It's reminding me a little bit of wings. Gosh, we seem to have some kind of an angel theme going on here, right? We have the halo, we've got the wings, but it feels like that. It feels as if there's something opening up in the back that's allowing for a free flow. It's allowing for, there's a trust. This dual-sided flow is coming out kind of like wings, but it's promoting a condition, a state in the physiology of being able to self-trust. And the left side trusts the right side, and the right side trusts the left side. Because they don't always. You know, one of the big problems that comes up when people, I'm just going back to something a little more colorful for you guys to look at here. Yeah, one of the things that can get blocked up in people's physiologies is that one is looking for the expansion of consciousness, but if the right side and the left side aren't in coordination, then you can have a flash of expansion of consciousness without good integration. Or good integration of consciousness allows for more refined perception. This again, thank you, my, oh, beautiful, my shout out to David Buckland, that he was looking at the difference between how some people have expansion of consciousness more and other people have refined perception of consciousness a little more. And sometimes people balance those two in different ways to promote different types of experiences of awakening and growth of enlightenment. It's beautiful. He also said, wings equal the fleur-de-lis. Oh, fleur-de-lis, yes. Nice. Oh, that's what that symbol actually is. That's beautiful. I didn't even know that. Beautiful. It shows up in all kinds of interesting places, doesn't it? When it's put into a symbol form. Okay. So totality is in the middle of that circle, and it's also out at the edges of the circle. And because we have human bodies, we collect experiences of that totality, and we find ways of stabilizing it in our physiologies, and everybody does a little bit differently. But I was going to say something about that. It a little bit escaped me. Sometimes stuff comes up, it's so abstract, right? Maybe I'll close this window for a minute just to give myself a little more open space here. Oh, yes. The mechanics or the laws of nature. So how it stabilizes in the physiology. I'm looking. It looks like there are a lot of different structures in the physiology that are responsible for bliss. You know, ultimately what we're dealing with, yes, the whole thing's coming back to me now. What we're dealing with here is totality, which sits outside the range of the capability of our senses of perception, our gross senses of perception, to cognize. Yet it does not sit outside the range of the capability of our being to perceive. So yeah, being perceives, even though the senses of perception can't fully get it, because our senses of perception are like taking little slices out of the electromagnetic field, basically. You know, the ears can hear between 16 cycles per second and 2600 cycles per second or something like that. So we're just a little slice. You start getting cycles start getting hertz that are faster than 2600, and then you come into the field of light. And I might have my that's what I was going to say. I think I have my decimal off. It is 26,000. Thank you. Thank you for always helping me be more precise. I love that guy. No names. Oh, he loves me too. No names though. So it's nice to have scholars, right? It's nice to have scholars around. All right. So yeah, Yeah, I suspected I was off by my decimal. Anyway, the point is that when the frequencies get faster than 26,000, then all of a sudden they get into the range of light, and then we're perceiving them with the eyes. So I want to come back to this because it was very delicate. Remember, it came in and then I lost it, and I pulled it back. I want to pull it back in a little bit more like in focus. And that is the way we directly experience totality. Because that's what expansion of consciousness is about, basically, right? It's a very kind of deep, visceral, total, full being experience. It's a physical, mental, emotional, the whole range of the field of density of self experiences it all together, all at once. And what I'm doing is I'm experiencing myself, totality. And I'm taking that experience and I'm dropping it into the field of infinite being, like the source of everything in creation. So totality, that's the whole universe, that's every node in the web of life, that's everything, everything. And dropping that conception or perception into the silence of being, the silence, like the silence of Shiva type, we could say, that deep, 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 inebriating silence, quality less. And it comes with this little tiny question. How do we promote this experience for everybody in this healing session and stabilize and integrate it at the same time? That's not too much to ask, is it? We can at least aim in that direction. I'm seeing a huge amount of transformation taking place in the head Mahamarma area and the neck throat all the way up this area. It looks like a lot of work being done to redefine self. I guess there's a certain amount of like who we think we are is sort of centered in this part of the body, right? Like we tend to associate with our faces and we tend to recognize our friends by the shapes of their faces more than their bodies. Okay, everybody's bodies are also different, but generally identification of self is through the construct of the head and face, the eyes, you know. I'm hearing this really, really big, beautiful, deep, rich hum of the creator, just hearing it. It's coming like a kind of a, this is how I'm experiencing, it's coming like a kind of a light medicine into this area of the body. And it's so palpable. It's almost like not just a humming sound, but like words, like there's so much presence in it that it's almost like an instruction or words. Okay, so I'm going to take that. That's like what came out of that infinite silence and drop that back into the infinite silence. You guys, it's just the algorithm. I'm just doing it up here. Yeah, sound om. Someone's like om. Yeah, for sure, for sure. It's got this great presence in it though. So I'm sending that presence back into the silence. The words that are coming back are, I'm holding you. And what's being held is the cord of light that runs from the crown of the head down through the body and connects again, it connects to infinity at both ends, right? Because it's one of the cords of the web of life. So I'm holding you, it's holding the cords. So this presence of self is holding all the cords. Okay, beautiful. So reverence, gratitude, appreciation, folding that back into the field of infinite being. Thank you for holding the cords for all of us. It's anchoring the seed of the cords. The cords of light are very long-standing structures in the universe The physiologies accept or take on a cord during the course of the lifetime, but the cord goes on both before and after. The physical body has come and gone. So the cords are receiving, and they are becoming more integrated. And we can think of them as ancient forms of cosmic intelligence, which are actually receiving a healing at this time by blessing, by virtue or by blessing of our collective gathering and intent. So we're creating a healing that's going to like these structures of the universe. Sometimes I refer to them as nagas, ancient ropes that comprise the web of life. Now, is this just in our bodies, or is this in the whole web of life? The answer coming back is to the degree. Oh yes, cord of light equals cord of light. Oh, that's so sweet. Okay, from California is saying cord of light, C-O-R-D, equals cord of light, C-H-O-R-D. Thank you, that. Thank you. That these Davic structures, these nagas, these cords of creation, subtle bodies, cords of light, are to the degree to which we can cognize the entire, oh, better go back so our cognition is better. We can cognize the entire web of life. To the degree that we can cognize this, the entire web of life, through a single physiology, through the consciousness of each of us as individuals, and through our consciousness as a collective, that is the degree to which divinity can stabilize in this structure and therefore in the cords of each that's running through each person's physiology. So each one of us is receiving according to what the whole universe is receiving. We're doing a healing that's affecting the whole universe, and each one of us gets a portion of that based on our own thread to the source of creation. So, of course, the next thing is, all right, so how does the causal body need to hum in order to enhance that effect? And the answer is we reflect the intensity of the love that is the foundation on which this whole healing got started. To whatever degree we're able to reflect that back to the source of creation. Hence the heart healing that we had earlier for our ancestors. That's why we did that one, to support, and this thing that's happening in the back, that's opening up the heart, the center of the Mahamarma in the back. So it's running through that Mahamarma and through that area in the back of the body. Okay. The sweetness that each person's heart produces that's flowing into the source of creation is being filtered through this back of the chest area, and it's creating new threads, it's birthing. It's like the center of that galaxy. It's birthing new nagas, it's birthing new forms of creation, which then all right. It's a little bit of an emotional moment for me. Please forgive. I love births. I always cry at births. Births are very exciting moments. How beautiful is a nebula, right? How beautiful is a nebula where stars are born? If you can imagine something like that coming out of your back right now, That's basically what it looks like from this perspective over here. And it's also extremely beautiful, like maybe even more beautiful than this amazing picture that's behind me. And I'm having a great time, by the way, shifting up all these backgrounds. Keeps you awake, doesn't it? No, sorry, just kidding. Please sleep. Sleep if you wish. It's good for you. We take in more information when we're in sleeping mode than when we're in waking mode. Anyway, this restructuring of everybody's heart mahamarma in the back, in our backs, which allows for a big kind of soft opening, free flow of consciousness, is thus allowing the impulses of sweetness that come from the heart, which are actually modes of the causal field. So the whole causal field is humming, and you know the causal field stretches all the way from the beginnings of the universe to the ends of the universe, and from the whole Hiranyagarbha, the whole cosmic egg. So that's how big everybody's causal body is. So that sweetness, which is humming like a mode through the causal body, is then channeling through the heart chakra. Instead of coming out front, it's coming out back. And as it does that, it's coming out as like a kind of a spray of all these threads in the web of life. And as the threads spray out, they fold back to the source of creation. And as that happens, I'm seeing this expansion of those threads. They're expanding and expanding, expanding. They're almost like exploding, expanding, almost like exploding, expanding. They're opening out and stretching out and expanding out to the full astral field, to the whole field where the threads of creation can reside. I feel like fireworks are going off in my brain right now and in that crown chakra. So I'm just following that energy up through, as it goes up through this sort of central part of the physiology, up into the brain, up into the head, up into the third ventricle of the brain, going onto either side of the left and right hemispheres. Particularly the right hemisphere looks extremely, yes, right hemisphere. That's where we're doing the integrating. Extremely lively right now, extremely lively. The words help integrate. The visual images help integrate. The integration is a byproduct of awareness, holding the experience and understanding it thoroughly. The more deeply, the more profoundly, the more completely the experience is understood. So my question then is, that comes down to how deeply is the experience experienced? And I was wondering, as this whole thing was going on, why aren't we working with the lower energies? Why aren't we working with the gut energies and the butt energies and all those good energies in the lower part of the body? And so I realized that there is a connection. First of all, the flows from the heart and up into the head area that are producing a lot of bliss in the body are communicating to the gut bacteria. Oh, this is so interesting. Ooh, and then there's another comment coming in, but let me just tell you, this is so interesting. Okay, so remember when there was that hum coming up in the central part of the physiology that kind of started off this healing, that we offered it back to silence, right? And I said, it's so, like, the level of personality in this energy frequency is so palpable. I feel like I'm in the presence of Brahman, right? Like this, it feels like some great cosmic soul of creation is like speaking to us inside our bodies. As this transformation in our bodies is now being picked up by our microbiome, We are literally that hum. We are that hum as it speaks to our microbiome. Our microbiome is our collective. There's something very cosmic going on here, and I'm really having just a little bit of trouble describing it. I'm going to do my best for you guys. You know I always do my best. For a long time, I've mentioned that the gut Mahamarma, sometimes called the Basti Mahamarma area of the body, is that area where, first of all this sort of rich, kind of unfiltered, cosmic information enters the body, right? We've got a cord of light. It's anchored to infinity at both ends. At this end, it connects to divine being, divine unmanifest being. At that end, it also does, but it goes through the center sun, right? Because our cord goes down to the center of the earth, and then the earth has its cords that go out. The same cords, basically, they wrap, they become ropes, and they go out to the galaxy, to our sun, to the center of our galaxy. From our galaxy, the cords get bigger and thicker, and they go to the center sun like that. And the center sun, it comes back to silence. It comes back to wholeness again. So this lower part of the body, what happens is a lot of cosmic information, a lot of universal information is received by the body through our feet and through the earth. And then what happens is the different chakras tend to filter and refine, and like a lot of discrimination goes on as the energy rises up the spine and goes through the different chakra centers until it gets up to the head area, where we've got just a nice, neat little package of what we consider to be our experience at this moment. However, our microbiome, it gets a lot of that information early on, and it's also instrumental in the sorting process, in the discrimination process. So each little gut bacteria experiences the universe from its perspective. And so you've got this collective down there, that's the collective in the gut that's going through this. So what's happening is, it's not happening for everyone. So I just want to see how we can set it up. The healing that just took place, which was a big opening, it was like a kind of a birthing thing that happened in the upper part of the body, sets up a condition in the body, which the microbiome then picks up. We understand what happened. We communicate to the microbiome through the hundreds of thousands of neural connections between our nervous system and our gut. We talk to them. We communicate to them this reality, and what happens is they receive a sense of self. They receive a sense of these selves as cosmic. The same way we receive, you see, we're working outside of space-time here. When we had that impulse in the heart area, that original hum, that was ourselves. But now we're going back and we're looking at it from the other side. So right now, as it's communicating and the microbiome is picking it up, what is happening is that initial impulse that was in the heart area actually was ourselves. Ourselves right now, we're talking to our microbiome. And as each gut bacteria receives the information, also being received by all of us in the nagas, in the cords of light. Remember, the gut bacteria look like little threads, right? They're not so different from the nagas in that way. And they each have their own little nagas inside them too. So it's like the whole thing is like a giant fractal. I told you I was having a little trouble describing this. It's like a giant fractal, basically. And what we did was the healing started out with this feeling in the chest heart area, and it's ending with us essentially promoting an effect within our physiologies that causes that original impulse to create. So it's completely looped on itself. I hope that makes sense. I hope that doesn't seem too odd. Seems a little odd to me, but let's see what some of these cool comments are coming in, because with some questions coming in, and sorry, I've got this funny light right here, so I have to look around the light to find the questions. And we've only got 5 more minutes, so if anybody has any questions, this is the time to pass them in. Okay, here's a question. Is it a torus circulating through the spine back up again? Is it a torus circulating through the spine and back up again? And then the same person says, it's like, I'll bring my microphone over here. It's like a never-ending fountain circulating from earth to sky via the central channel up and down. Yes, it is like that. But what's really interesting to me is I realize that we just gave ourselves a living example of the fact that it's also a never-ending cycle through time. We're talking to ourselves. We're talking to ourselves through the physical form. So when the upper part of my body understands something, then it talks to the microbiome. And when the microbiome receives that information, the microbiome, being a ginormous collective, then transmits that information back to the universe. Oh, that was the piece I didn't have. That was the piece I didn't understand. You know, I was saying that we get a lot of universal information coming up through the cord, right? Because we connect to the earth, we connect to the stars. But what I didn't realize is that also our microbiome is very adept at communicating through that same cord to, hello, there's my microphone, to the rest of the universe. Oh, I'm getting more, there are like more downloads coming in. This is tying into a lot of stuff, guys, because one of the things we know is that bacteria survive in outer space. And another thing that we know is very interesting is that as comets circle around through our galaxies, they carry information in the form often of bacteria, and you know how a comet will come into our solar system and it's just like spewing all this stuff out all over the place. So it's our microbiome knows that it's connected into this cosmic structure. And for the microbiome, outer space doesn't feel like, oh, off limits. Like to us, we're like, oh, I can't breathe out there. I can't go to outer space. Our microbiome's like, heck, man, I'm out. I can go out there anytime I want. The microbiome is well aware of its cosmic connection. And it's actually a player in our awakening journey, in that it's giving back to the universe through us. It's giving back to the universe through us. That's really interesting. I'm almost having trouble wrapping my head around it. Okay, let's see. Here's another comment. She's saying, it's why we all know we are the center of the universe. Right, because our cords are just like anchored there. Here's another comment. Does the practice of surrendering all content and content allow all this to happen unimpeded by the limited mind? Yes. When we offer anything, any healing that happens, any experience that rises up, any feeling that you feel in your heart, any communication between you and your microbiome, any experience whatsoever that you're having at this moment, when it is allowed to sort of, and I'm going to use the word allowed to fall into, I'm sorry, it's more like a euphemism, please forgive. There are a lot of ways to transcend, but the premise being that when the mind transcends, it goes beyond thought. It goes back to the source of creation. We allow that experience to go back to the source of creation. When our awareness goes to the source of creation, it takes that experience we're having and it takes it to the source of creation. And when that happens, it ripples out to infinity. Rippling to infinity. We are like ripples of infinity right now. I think did that answer the question? Does the practice of surrendering all content and content allow all this to happen unimpeded by the limited mind. Yeah, because if we think of the mind in terms of thoughts, right? But energy healing is a process that's taking place at more of an experiential level. So, you know me, I'm up here in front of you with a microphone, so I'm doing my best to sort of describe it. But I can tell you that what I'm describing is the interpretation of the experience, which my perception is picking up from our collective. So we're doing tremendous, this was an amazing webinar. It's amazing. Tremendous collective healing work. Ooh, I think there's another comment over here. Oh, people are raising their hands. Yes. So collective healing work, working with ourselves in terms of ourselves being a collective, in terms of our collective microbiome, and in terms, of course, of the whole ball of wax, the whole creation, the source of creation. So thank you, everyone, for being with me. We have come to our time. Perfect. Oh, more hands are raising. Thank you, everyone. Amazing. I love you all so much. I'm so grateful. Just letting everybody know that we had to upgrade our Zoom to the next level up because we made 98 computers hooked up tonight. 2 more and we will pass 100. So tell your friends, maybe we'll make 100 next time. It's good for lots of people to do this work together. The more of us are together, the more powerful our collective energies. And I love you all. I love you each dearly. Thank you for being with me tonight. I'm looking forward to tomorrow morning. We will pick up where we left off today and go somewhere. Okay, thanks for joining me. Come see me again tomorrow. Bye.